The heavy wooden doors of St. Teresa's convent closed with a finality that echoed through Isabella Martinez's 16-year-old heart like a death knell. She stood in the austere entrance hall, her designer jeans and colorful top a stark contrast to the gray stone walls and simple wooden crosses that adorned every surface. Her father Carlos stood beside her, his grip on her arm firm enough to leave bruises, his voice smooth as honey as he spoke to Mother Superior Catherine. "Isabella has been very difficult lately," Carlos explained, his accent thick with authority and disappointment. "She refuses to follow our family's values, stays out late with inappropriate friends, and has completely lost respect for tradition. We believe a period of reflection and spiritual guidance will help her remember who she is and where she comes from." Isabella's dark eyes flashed with anger and desperation, but she remained silent. She had learned long ago that speaking up only made things worse with her father. Mother Superior Catherine, a stern woman in her 60s with silver hair peeking from beneath her habit, nodded sympathetically while studying Isabella's defiant posture and the fear barely concealed behind her rebellious facade. "How long do you anticipate Isabella staying with us?" Mother Superior asked, her voice professionally calm. Carlos smiled, but there was something cold in his expression that made Isabella's stomach turn. "As long as it takes for her to understand her place in this world. Perhaps a year, maybe more. Money is no object. I want her to receive the full benefit of your guidance." As her father signed the paperwork that would essentially imprison her in this place, Isabella caught sight of a younger nun watching from the shadows near the chapel entrance. Sister Maria, perhaps 35 years old, had kind eyes that seemed to see right through Isabella's tough exterior to the frightened girl beneath. For just a moment, those eyes offered something Isabella hadn't felt in months: hope that someone might actually care about what happened to her. Block 2, Sister Maria's suspicions. Sister Maria had been at St. Teresa's for 12 years, long enough to recognize the difference between a truly troubled teenager and a girl who was simply trapped. As she showed Isabella to her sparse room, a narrow bed, small desk, wooden cross, and single-barred window, she noticed details that troubled her deeply. Isabella's expensive clothes were perfectly clean and well-fitted, suggesting a privileged background rather than street life. Her hands were soft, her nails manicured, her posture that of someone accustomed to respect, not rebellion. More concerning were the subtle signs of trauma Sister Maria had learned to recognize from her years working with abused women before taking her vows. Isabella flinched when anyone moved too quickly near her, kept her arms crossed protectively across her body, and had the hyper-vigilant alertness of someone who had learned to anticipate danger from those who should protect her. "Isabella," Sister Maria said gently as the girl sat on the edge of her new bed, staring at the floor. "I want you to know that while you're here, you're safe. Whatever brought you to us, you don't have to carry it alone." Isabella looked up sharply, as if kindness was such a foreign concept that she couldn't quite process it. "You don't understand," Isabella whispered, her voice barely audible. "He said if I try to leave or cause trouble, he'll make sure I never see the outside world again. He has connections, influence. No one will believe me over him." The words hung in the air like a confession, and Sister Maria felt her heart break a little more. That night, Sister Maria knelt in the chapel longer than usual, praying not just for guidance, but for courage. Something was very wrong with Isabella's situation, and every instinct told her that this girl wasn't here for spiritual guidance. She was here as a prisoner. The question was whether Sister Maria would have the strength to do what might be necessary to help her, even if it meant challenging the very institution that had given her life meaning. Block 3. The real story emerges. Over the following weeks, Sister Maria made it her mission to spend time with Isabella during meals, garden work, and study periods. Slowly, carefully, she began to piece together the real story behind the girl's arrival at the convent. Isabella was not the promiscuous, rebellious teenager her father had described. She was an honor student who had been accepted to 3 prestigious universities with full scholarships, a talented artist whose paintings showed remarkable emotional depth, and a young woman whose only crime had been falling in love with someone her father disapproved of. "David is Chinese-American," Isabella finally confessed one afternoon while they worked together in the convent garden, her hands shaking as she pulled weeds with unnecessary violence. "His family immigrated here when he was 5. He's smart, kind, respectful. Everything any parent should want for their daughter. But my father sees only that he's not Latino, not Catholic, not what he considers appropriate for our family's reputation." Sister Maria listened without judgment as Isabella revealed how her father had discovered their relationship through hired surveillance, how he had threatened David's family's business, and how he had ultimately given Isabella an ultimatum: break up with David and submit to an arranged engagement with his business partner's son, or face the consequences. "When I refused, he had me declared mentally unstable," Isabella continued, tears streaming down her face. "He has doctor friends who will say anything for money. He told everyone I had a nervous breakdown, that I was making up stories about abuse, that I needed intensive spiritual counseling. The papers he signed when he brought me here give him legal guardianship over all my decisions until I turn 18. The full horror of Isabella's situation became clear to Sister Maria. This wasn't about spiritual guidance or family values. This was about a controlling father using the convent as a prison to break his daughter's will and force her into compliance. Carlos Martinez had found the perfect way to hide his abuse behind the respectable facade of religious intervention, knowing that few people would question a concerned father seeking help for his troubled daughter. Block 4. Investigating the truth sister. Maria knew she needed proof before she could act. Using her connections with social workers and child advocates from her previous life, she began quietly investigating the Martinez family. What she discovered chilled her to the bone. Carlos Martinez was a wealthy businessman with a history of controlling behavior, multiple restraining orders filed by former employees, and rumors of domestic violence that had been quietly settled out of court. More disturbing was what she learned about Isabella's mother, who had supposedly died in a car accident when Isabella was 12. Hospital records that Sister Maria's social worker friend obtained through careful channels showed that Maria Elena Martinez had been treated multiple times for suspicious injuries in the months before her death. The accident report contained inconsistencies that had been overlooked because of Carlos's influence and connections. "Sister Maria," Isabella whispered one evening after Compline, "I need to tell you something about my mother." The girl's face was pale in the candlelight of the chapel, and her hands trembled as she spoke. "She didn't die in a car accident. I was there that night. I saw what really happened." Isabella's voice broke as she revealed the truth she had carried for 4 years. Her mother had been planning to leave Carlos, had packed bags for herself and Isabella, had found the courage to take her daughter and start a new life. But Carlos had discovered the plan. The confrontation had been violent, terrifying, and when it was over, Maria Elena was unconscious, and Carlos was putting her in the car, claiming he was rushing her to the hospital. "The car went off the road 3 miles from our house," Isabella continued, tears streaming down her face. "He called 911, played the devastated husband perfectly. Everyone believed it was an accident, that he was a grieving widower left to raise his daughter alone. But I knew. I've always known." Sister Maria felt the full weight of Isabella's terror now. This girl wasn't just fighting for her freedom. She was fighting for her life. Carlos Martinez was a man who had already killed once to maintain control, and Isabella was the only witness to his crime. No wonder he was so determined to keep her isolated and discredited. Block 5. Allies in unexpected places. Sister Maria realized she couldn't handle this situation alone. She began carefully reaching out to other nuns in the convent, testing their willingness to question authority when a young person's welfare was at stake. To her surprise, she found an unexpected ally in Sister Rosa, a 70-year-old nun who had been at St. Teresa's for over 40 years and had seen enough injustice disguised as piety to recognize it immediately. "I've been watching that girl," Sister Rosa confided during their morning walk through the cloister. "She's not troubled. She's terrified. And that father of hers," Sister Rosa shook her head with disgust. I've met his type before. Men who use God and tradition as weapons to control women and children. It makes me sick. Sister Rosa revealed that she had her own suspicions about Isabella's situation and had been documenting everything. The girl's behavior, her father's visits, the inconsistencies in his story. I may be old, but I'm not blind, she said with fierce determination. If we're going to help this child, we need to be smart about it. Together they began building a case. Sister Rosa used her long-standing relationships with local law enforcement and social services to quietly gather information, while Sister Maria worked with Isabella to document her father's abuse and threats. They discovered that David, Isabella's boyfriend, had been trying desperately to find her, having been told by Carlos that she had been sent away to recover from her mental breakdown. The breakthrough came when Sister Rosa's contact at the police department revealed that David's family had actually filed a missing person report for Isabella, claiming they had evidence that she had been taken against her will. The report had been buried due to Carlos's influence, but it still existed, proving that there were people on the outside fighting for Isabella's freedom. We have a window of opportunity, Sister Rosa told Sister Maria. But if we're going to act, it has to be soon. Carlos is planning to move Isabella to a more secure facility in another state, somewhere we can't reach her. Block 6. The confrontation with authority. Sister Maria knew the time had come to confront Mother Superior Catherine with the truth about Isabella's situation. It was a risk that could cost her everything, her position at the convent, her standing in the church, possibly even her vows. But as she knelt in prayer that night, she felt certain that God would want her to protect an innocent child, regardless of the personal cost. The meeting took place in Mother Superior's office, with Sister Rosa present as a witness. Sister Maria laid out everything they had discovered: the evidence of Carlos's abuse, the truth about Isabella's mother's death, the girl's academic achievements that contradicted her father's claims, and the legal questions surrounding her commitment to the convent. Mother Superior Catherine listened in silence, her face growing paler with each revelation. "These are very serious accusations, Sister Maria," she said finally. "If what you're saying is true, then we have been unknowingly participating in what amounts to kidnapping and false imprisonment. What I'm saying is that we have a choice," Sister Maria replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "We can continue to enable a dangerous man's abuse of his daughter, or we can do what our faith actually calls us to do: protect the innocent and seek justice for the oppressed." Sister Rosa leaned forward, her aged hands folded calmly in her lap. "Mother Superior, I've been in religious life for 40 years. I've seen the church make mistakes before, usually when good people stayed silent because it was easier than doing what was right. This is one of those moments where silence makes us complicit." Mother Superior Catherine stood and walked to her window, looking out at the garden where Isabella could be seen helping younger children with their studies. "If we act on this information, we're essentially declaring war against a powerful man who has significant influence in our community. Are you prepared for the consequences of that decision?" "Are we prepared for the consequences of doing nothing?" Sister Maria countered. "Isabella turns 18 in 6 months. If we don't help her now, Carlos will have broken her spirit completely by then. Or worse. We took vows to serve God, not to serve wealthy men who hide behind religious rhetoric." The room fell silent as Mother Superior Catherine wrestled with the decision that would define her leadership and possibly the future of St. Teresa's convent. Block 7. The Plan for Freedom. After 3 agonizing days of prayer and deliberation, Mother Superior Catherine made her decision. "We will help Isabella," she announced to Sister Maria and Sister Rosa. "But we must be extremely careful. Carlos Martinez has the resources to destroy us legally and financially if we make any mistakes." The plan they developed was complex and dangerous. Sister Rosa would use her connections to contact David and his family, arranging for them to file additional legal motions challenging Isabella's commitment. Sister Maria would work with Isabella to document her father's threats and abuse in written statements that could be used in court. Mother Superior Catherine would reach out to the diocese's legal counsel, presenting the situation as a matter of protecting the convent from potential liability for harboring a girl who might have been brought there under false pretenses. The most crucial element was timing. Carlos visited Isabella every Sunday after Mass, a routine he maintained to keep up appearances as a devoted father. During his next visit, they would need to have all their evidence ready and legal representation standing by. Isabella needs to understand that once we start this process, there's no going back, Mother Superior Catherine warned. Her father will use every resource at his disposal to discredit her and us. She'll need to be stronger than she's ever been. When they explained the plan to Isabella, the girl's reaction was a mixture of hope and terror. "You don't understand what he's capable of," she whispered. "When my mother tried to leave, he made her disappear. What makes you think he won't do the same to all of us?" Sister Maria took Isabella's hands, feeling how they trembled with fear and possibility. Because this time he won't be fighting just one frightened woman. He'll be fighting the entire community that knows the truth. And sometimes, Isabella, the only way to stop a bully is to stand up to him publicly, where everyone can see what kind of man he really is. The next few days were spent in careful preparation, gathering evidence, coordinating with lawyers, and preparing Isabella emotionally for the confrontation that would determine her future. Each woman involved knew they were risking everything they had built, but none of them could live with themselves if they failed to act. Block 8. The legal battle begins. Sunday morning arrived with the weight of destiny. Carlos Martinez arrived at St. Teresa's exactly on schedule, immaculately dressed and carrying flowers for the chapel, playing his role as the devoted father perfectly. He had no idea that in the Mother Superior's office, 3 lawyers waited with documentation that would shatter his carefully constructed facade. The confrontation began during what Carlos assumed would be a routine visit with Isabella. Instead of finding his daughter alone in the visiting room, he discovered her surrounded by Sister Maria, Sister Rosa, Mother Superior Catherine, and 2 legal advocates. The change in his demeanor was immediate and terrifying. The mask of concerned fatherhood fell away, revealing the cold, calculating predator beneath. "What is the meaning of this?" Carlos demanded, his voice sharp with authority and barely contained rage. "I don't appreciate my daughter being subjected to whatever this is without my permission." "Mr. Martinez," said Margaret Williams, the lead attorney, "we're here because serious questions have been raised about the circumstances of Isabella's commitment to this facility. We have evidence suggesting that she was brought here under false pretenses and is being held against her will." Carlos's laugh was harsh and dismissive. "My daughter is mentally unstable. She makes up elaborate stories to avoid taking responsibility for her behavior. These women have obviously been manipulated by her lies." But Isabella, strengthened by weeks of support and preparation, found her voice. "Tell them about my mother, Papa," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "Tell them what really happened the night she died." The color drained from Carlos's face, and for the first time since entering the room, he looked genuinely shaken. "You don't know what you're saying," he whispered. "You were just a child. You were traumatized, confused." "I was 12 years old, not blind," Isabella continued, gaining confidence with each word. "I saw you hit her. I saw you put her unconscious body in the car. I saw you drive away and come back hours later with tears that looked real enough to fool everyone except the daughter who watched you practice them in the mirror." Block 9. The truth exposed. The legal proceedings that followed were swift and decisive. With Isabella's testimony, corroborated by the evidence Sister Maria and Sister Rosa had gathered, Carlos Martinez's carefully constructed world began to crumble. The lawyers had discovered financial records showing payments to doctors who had falsified Isabella's mental health evaluations, witnesses who had seen Carlos threatening David's family, and hospital records from Isabella's mother that painted a clear picture of systematic abuse. David Chen and his family had been fighting their own legal battle, hiring private investigators who had uncovered even more damaging evidence about Carlos's business practices and personal history. When the cases merged, the weight of evidence became overwhelming. The irony, Margaret Williams explained to the group gathered in Mother Superior's office, is that by bringing Isabella here, Mr. Martinez actually created the perfect environment for the truth to come out. He thought he was isolating her, but instead, he placed her in the care of people who had both the moral conviction and the resources to help her. Carlos's response was predictably vicious. He hired aggressive attorneys who attempted to portray the nuns as religious fanatics who had brainwashed his daughter. He spread rumors about Sister Maria having inappropriate relationships with the girls in her care. He threatened to sue the convent for everything they owned, but his tactics backfired spectacularly. The publicity surrounding the case brought forward other victims, former employees who had been afraid to speak out, neighbors who had witnessed suspicious incidents, even relatives who had been silenced by Carlos's threats and money. The man who had seemed so powerful and untouchable suddenly found himself facing criminal charges for domestic violence, fraud, and suspicion of murder in his wife's death. Isabella, meanwhile, was granted legal emancipation and protective custody. At 17, she was declared a legal adult with the right to make her own decisions about her life, education, and relationships. The first thing she did was enroll in the university that had been holding her scholarship, with plans to study social work and law. "I want to help other girls who are trapped the way I was," she told Sister Maria. "I want to make sure that no one else has to go through what my mother and I went through." Block 10. Consequences and Redemption. The fallout from Isabella's case reverberated far beyond St. Teresa's convent. Carlos Martinez was ultimately convicted of fraud, domestic violence, and conspiracy in his wife's death, receiving a 20-year prison sentence. His business empire collapsed as partners and clients distanced themselves from the scandal. Most importantly, the investigation he had triggered led to policy changes in how religious institutions handle commitments of minors, ensuring that other young people couldn't be trapped as Isabella had been. For Sister Maria, the experience had been transformative in ways she hadn't expected. "I entered religious life thinking I was supposed to be separate from the world's problems," she reflected to Sister Rosa as they walked through the convent garden. "But this experience taught me that sometimes our greatest service to God comes from getting our hands dirty in the messiest human situations." Mother Superior Catherine had faced her own reckoning during the crisis. The diocese had initially been furious about the convent's involvement in such a public scandal, but the eventual vindication and positive publicity had actually strengthened St. Teresa's reputation as a place where justice and compassion mattered more than convenience or financial considerations. Sister Rosa, despite her advanced age, had become something of a celebrity in Catholic social justice circles. "Turns out there's something to be said for having an old nun who's too stubborn to be intimidated," she joked to reporters who wanted to interview her about the case. But it was Isabella's transformation that provided the most powerful testament to what had been accomplished. The frightened, broken girl who had arrived at the convent 8 months earlier had become a confident young woman with clear goals and unshakable determination. She had maintained her relationship with David, whose family had essentially adopted her as their own daughter. She was excelling in her university studies and had already begun volunteering with organizations that helped domestic violence survivors. "You saved my life," Isabella told Sister Maria during her final visit to the convent before starting her sophomore year of college. "But more than that, you taught me that sometimes the most important thing you can do is refuse to stay silent when you know something is wrong." Block 11. A New Beginning. 2 years after the confrontation that changed everything, Isabella Martinez, now Isabella Chen, having taken David's family name when they legally adopted her, returned to St. Teresa's convent, not as a prisoner, but as a volunteer. She was leading a support group for young women who had experienced family trauma, using the very skills she had learned during her own healing process. "It's strange being back here," she confided to Sister Maria as they sat in the garden where Isabella had first begun to trust again. "This place that was supposed to be my prison became the place where I found my freedom, and the woman who was supposed to be my jailer became the person who saved my life." Sister Maria smiled, watching as Isabella prepared for that evening's support group meeting. The young woman had grown into exactly who Sister Maria had always believed she could become: strong, compassionate, and dedicated to helping others find their own paths to freedom and healing. The convent itself had been transformed by the experience. St. Teresa's was now recognized as a refuge for young women in crisis, but with proper safeguards and oversight to ensure that no one could ever again use religious institutions to hide abuse. Sister Maria had been appointed as the director of these programs, combining her calling to religious life with her passion for social justice. "Do you ever regret it?" Isabella asked as they prepared to join the support group. "Fighting for me, I mean. You risked everything you had built here." Sister Maria looked at the young woman, who had grown from a terrified teenager into a powerful advocate for others, and felt the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you've lived your values when it mattered most. "Isabella," she said, her voice filled with certainty, "sometimes the greatest act of faith is breaking the rules to do what's right. I've never been more sure of my calling than I was the day I decided to fight for your freedom. And seeing who you've become, knowing that other girls will be helped because you're alive and free and strong, there's no doubt in my mind that we did exactly what God wanted us to do." As the evening support group began, with Isabella facilitating and Sister Maria observing, both women knew they had discovered something profound about the true meaning of religious vocation. Sometimes serving God means serving the institution, but sometimes it means challenging the institution to live up to its highest ideals. In Isabella's case, it had meant choosing love over law, justice over order, and courage over comfort. The girl who had been sent to the convent against her will had become the woman who would ensure that other girls would never face the same fate. And the nun who had risked everything to save her had found her truest calling in the process.